Honestly, these are some of the best stories I've ever gotten from my subscribers. I saved them up just for this video. God damn it, steep sea divers, man. Anyways, grab a blanket, turn off your lights for 3 of the best scary subscriber horror stories I've ever gotten. Deep Sea Diver. Hi, Horror Studio 1. I recently left my job as a deep sea diver. I work for a large company that offers diving services ranging from salvage, underwater demolition, ship repairs, and search and recovery. They are a reputable company and are considered safe and reliable, so much so that they're often contracted by the government. Truth be told, I will miss working for them. The people I worked with were truly the best of the best. But there are only so many unexplainable things you can witness in the deep before you decide to stay out of the ocean forever. Here are some examples of the many secrets many divers take to their graves. On the way to a job we were contracted to perform, our propeller becomes fouled. I suited up and prepared to make a quick dive to remove the fouling. I did a brief inspection and located thick line wrapped around the prop and shaft. I notified the supervisor, who then lowered a canvas bag with the tools I needed to cut it off. I hung the bag from the shaft and began freeing the propeller. It didn't take long, and I returned to my tool bag. I noticed a strange crunching sound when I dropped the tools in the bag. When I looked in the bag, it was full of large shells, many of which I had just crushed. After getting out of the water and stripping off my gear, I began examining them. The shells had what appeared to be hieroglyphics etched into them. I learned from one of the senior guys that this wasn't common, but it happened to them several times before. On one other occasion, we were recovering a military aircraft. When we arrived, naval ships were on scene waiting for us to recover it for them. We were quickly briefed that they had lost communication with the pilot and wanted us to recover it so that they could investigate. I was sitting comms and logs, communicate with divers, and monitor depth and bottom time when the divers reached the project. They reported that the plane was intact. We were all surprised. The supervisor asked how extensive the damage was, and they explained it was completely intact, as in there was no visible damage at all. It was just resting on bottom. Even stranger, the aircraft canopy was still in place. That means that the cockpit is still sealed. In other words, the pilot did not eject. But there was no sign of the pilot. We recovered the plane, and the military took custody of it. We never heard about it again. I witnessed another strange occurrence from topside at the location of a planned demolition. It's necessary to explain that one way you can keep track of a diver is to watch their bubble stream. When a diver inhales, the helmet's demand regulator provides air from their umbilical. Then when they exhale, it is exhausted into the water and floats up to the surface. On topside, you can watch the bubbles to get a general sense of where the divers are. Now, on this occasion, we were hundreds of miles from land and had placed 2 divers in the water. About an hour into the dive, we started noticing something strange was happening. There were 3 distinct bubble streams coming from where they were working. At first, we assumed that there was a current and it was affecting them. But soon, we noticed a 4th set of bubbles coming from a distance. It stopped about 20 feet from the divers, near the other mysterious bubbles. We asked the divers, but neither could see anything out of the ordinary. Then, even from the surface, we heard a blood-curdling screech from the waters, then silence. The divers weren't too concerned. We hear strange things all the time. Sound travels well in the water, and you learn to assume it's a long distance away. But soon, it looked like the water in the distance was boiling, and it was getting closer. It wasn't boiling though, It was countless new bubble streams moving nearer to the location our divers were working. The supervisor ordered the divers to get onto the dive stage to be lifted back to surface. The bubbles were frighteningly close now, and the divers being lifted out said they had begun seeing shadowed figures in the distance. They couldn't make out what they were, though. We elected to pull the divers out without completing their decompression stops and throwing them into our hyperbaric chamber. During another dive near the Bahamas, I had a frightening experience. It was my first salvage job with them, so I got in with a highly experienced diver. At just over 200 feet deep, we were examining the sunken vessel for rigging points. As I approached the bow of the ship, I noticed he was investigating a damaged portion of the hull. He swam a few feet into the ship looking around. I asked him a few times if he wanted to tend his umbilical air supply hose from just outside the ship. It's highly advisable since it's dangerous to enter a sunken ship, to which he stated no. He didn't want to enter the ship. He insisted he was on the port side of the ship. Assuming he was disoriented, I reached in to grab him. Just before touching him, I realized there were no bubbles coming from the helmet. Whatever it wasn't breathing. I backed up and reported that something else was down there. I expected mockery, but there was none. The next thing I heard was the diving supervisor. "Boat divers, square yourselves away and get ready to leave bottom." Went back on surface. I asked the supervisor about it. He said he refused to put his divers in exceptionally dangerous situations. He then refused to clarify. We declined to complete the salvage. I'm not entirely sure how to explain this next dive. I was on bottom, laying on my back, staring up towards the surface. All I could see were varying shades of darkness. Suddenly, I came to my senses. I had no memory of how I got there. I realized I couldn't remember getting into the water or even why I was there. I tried to will my body to stand up, but realized I couldn't move. I couldn't control my body. Over the comms, I could hear Topside instructing the other diver to find me. How long had I been down there? How long had I been missing? He told Topside that they grabbed him. I tried to shout out, but I couldn't even do that. After a few frantic moments of communication between the diver and Topside, I noticed a shadow growing clear. It was moving towards me. "Topside, I found him!" He reached down and grabbed my harness to drag me back to our dive stage. As he pulled me, I rolled over and got a brief glance at my surroundings. I had been laying in a pile of human bones. One of the strangest things I've ever witnessed happened on a body recovery mission. Even I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't been the one in the water. The military had found a site in which they believed the bodies of several missing World War II soldiers would be found. I entered the water with another diver with body bags to carry the remains. On bottom, we eventually found 3 skeletons. We placed them in the bags and returned to the stage. On our return trip to the surface, we saw the bags begin to move. At first very slightly, then violently shaking and violently rolling. Bubbles escaped from 2 of the bags, but then they went still. The 3rd bag continued struggling. We reached surface and sat down on the deck, stripping our gear immediately. We were too afraid to touch the bags, but one of the tenders eventually unzipped the moving bag. An old, frail, very alive man rolled out coughing water. We stood shocked, unable to comprehend what we were witnessing. Still not sure what I was doing, I ran to the other 2 bags and unzipped them. There were 2 more old men laying motionless in the bags. They appeared to have just drowned. We attempted CPR, but were unable to revive the men. The man, who was somehow now alive, was backing away from us, screaming of the horrors he'd witnessed. He screamed about an eternity spent burning. We locked him in a room and contacted the military that we had found a survivor. Within the hour, a military chopper was hovering over us to pick up the 2 bodies and the survivor. We had placed the bodies back into their bags and handed them over. The man bent over to inspect them, unzipping the bags. As he opened the bags, an unbearable stench overtook us. The bodies appeared to be in decay, as if they'd been dead and soaking in water for a week. He zipped it back up and had them lifted into the chopper. Then we escorted him to the survivor. We could hear the screaming from down the hall. We opened the door and saw blood splattered on the walls. He was alive and screaming, but he too appeared to have started decaying. The man calmly walked him to the chopper, and the 2 of them were lifted on board. We never heard about them again. However, I went back and examined the room. With his blood, he had drawn hieroglyphics on the walls. I'm still not certain of what I viewed, but there were a few things that seemed to stand out: waves, flames, and bodies. There was a tremendous amount of them on the walls, but shortly after I walked in, our supervisor began scrubbing the walls. He refused to let us examine it any further. I've heard rumors about the Keepers of the Deep. I've wondered about them for quite some time now. I believe they are the link between many of our stories. Their myth within our team is seldom spoken of, but here is what I've gathered over the years. We are not meant to roam the depths of the ocean. And when a diver loses his life in the deep, it doesn't stay that way. They are cursed to forever roam the oceans, and when they find the living, in an envious rage, they will bring you back to the depths from which they came. Stalker. Well, starting out, I don't know if you want a long story, but mine's pretty long, so if you don't want it, just ignore it. I don't really care. Well, I hate self-pity, so it seems like it is in the story. I apologize. I'll start out by saying my dad is, or was, a part of the Special Elite Forces in the military, and has a lot of knowledge in that particular area. I only say that because it will be a key detail to my story. It had all started when I was around 6 years old. My parents divorced, which was a lot more complicated than a regular divorce, but that's a whole different story, and my dad left. We lived in Lacey, Washington at the time, and we would switch off weekends because my mom and dad, but primarily me and my sister, stayed at my mom's. Well, right after they got divorced, it got weird to say the least. My dad was a very protective man and kind of went out of control when my mom divorced him. But he began when my mom was sitting on the balcony outside of her room when she saw 2 men standing in the forest with binoculars watching her. She ran back inside and closed all the curtains. But the next day, they were still there, but this time they were watching us, me and my little sister, and they were circling the house. My mom then walked outside and walked over to her neighbor's house, he's a cop, and complained that there were 2 men watching us. She then explained that she thinks my dad sent them. He didn't believe her. He said that my father is an amazing man and would never do that, and to just ignore it. But it eventually got worse. When my mom would drop us off at my dad's house, she would search our house and she found a lot. Cameras everywhere. He put cameras in the DVD player and watched us. He tapped into my mom's phone and listened to every conversation, saw every text, and read every email that she received or sent. My mom was freaking out and called her boyfriend to come over because she was afraid. So he came and stayed the night with her and comforted her, saying that he would protect our family and so on. Well, my mom gets a call at about 2 a.m. from my dad saying he's dropping us off. The conversation kind of went like this. I'm dropping off the girls. Brian, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Why are you dropping them off? I need to do some stuff, and they need to come to your house. I'm dropping them off. So my mom freaks out, hangs up the phone, and hauls absolute ass to get her boyfriend out of there because she knows he's not gonna drop us off. He's here because he knows my mom's boyfriend is here, and my dad will kill him in a heartbeat. So my mom hears a knock at the door, and she looks out the curtain and sees my dad standing with me and my sister hand in hand. Mom opens the door, grabs me and my sister, and slams the door in my dad's face. He's yelling from the other side of the door, "I know he's in there!" referring to Brandon, the boyfriend. Long story short, he's kicking the door, and my mom yells she's gonna call the cops. My dad was never seen in person by my family ever since. Fast forward about 5 years, I'm sitting on the couch in my new house and I hear a faint crying. I remember crouching next to my door of my mom's office and hear her crying in the phone. She says, "I don't know what I'm gonna do." And as I open the door to ask what's wrong and comfort her, I hear, "He's put all the money in my account. He's gonna kill himself." Next thing is a little foggy. I was just screaming and crying most of the time, while police officers are coming into my house and talking with my mom, finding all the information they can on this man, my father. My sister is sitting on the couch with me and trying to distract me from the situation. Police officers are leaving with minimal information on him and said there's nothing they can do. The officer that was sitting with me on the couch gets up and flashes me a smile as he reaches for the front door behind all the other officers and turns around. "Good night, Mrs. Davis, and Merry Christmas." 13 years old, I'm sitting next to my friend at her house while my stepdad is next door in the kitchen making breakfast. He was babysitting us at the time because my mom was on a business trip. My friend's house and my new house is right next to each other, so you can walk back and forth. Well, I get a text from my stepdad saying, "You need to be home right now." So I say goodbye and walk over to my house and walk upstairs to my room. He's waiting for me there, anger plastered all over his face. He yells at me saying I was supposed to be home a while ago, while I explain that he just texted me saying I should be home now, not a while ago. He didn't like that I talked back. But what he did next was worse punishment than a parent should give for talking back or even yelling at an adult. No amount of disrespect you give towards anyone should result to him doing what he did next. Not gonna say it here because once said, you can't read stories that include abuse, rape, anything of the sort, so I won't say it. 15 years old, I'm living on an island, no more stepdad, they divorced. I live near Bellingham on a great island that is filled with great people. I'm joking, I never get a break. I live on an island where there's good people and there's people that seem good. God, I can't trust anyone, can I? So my mom meets him. He's great at first, fun. He's my basketball coach. He's the cool boyfriend. Until he's not. They get into a fight. He starts drinking and comes downstairs to my room when my mom stormed out of the house. He sits next to me and saying how I need to shape up and be a good little girl. After that, he slowly gets up and leaves, goes back to his house. The next day, at basketball, he pulls me aside and violates me. But he's an adult, right? So of course I can't talk back or fight back. Remember what happened when I did that last time? 16 years old, sitting on the same island, same place, same people. I'm still here waiting for the next person, waiting to get through the next level that my life has to offer. Not understanding where it went to shit, not understanding why it happened to me. But I'm ready for that next obstacle, ready for the next person to tell me I have to listen to adults. Currently, I'm ready, sitting in front of my door with a shotgun in my lap and waiting for him to come through the door because he's been trespassing on my property and he's not supposed to be here. My mom is at work and my sister is at a friend's house. And I'm ready. Because this time, I'm not just gonna sit here and watch one more person take control of me or steal my pride once more. I'm ready. Deep web story. So, just a little background information. I am a 15-year-old teen from Toronto, Canada. My name is Aaron. but I don't feel comfortable exposing my name for what I'm about to tell you. So I heard about Tor when I was 13 years old. I haven't seen any disgusting sights like my friends told me, like red rooms, backdoors, etc. But I've been a hacker since a year ago. I'm an intelligent kid when it comes down to computer programming, hacking, and stuff like that. But when I live my normal life as a sophomore, I tend not to tell anybody about my experiences because it is a really fucked up story. So this happened about a year ago, and if anyone is gonna try this, I suggest you delete Tor and never go back to that program. And if you have any VPN network or any programs that secures your Wi-Fi, that isn't going to help. So what happened is that me and my friend Chris were looking at red rooms and a chat box appeared on the center of my monitor saying, "Are you sure you want to see what you're about to see?" My friend Chris thought it was a bot texting, but I knew that it was the owner of the site. I typed in the box, "Yes, I'm sure." What he replied didn't scare me because it was a fake address and fake IP address. The address led to Germany, England, and France, so there's no way the owner of the site would be able to track me down. I was wrong. He took a screenshot of my apartment building where I still live at this day. I'm typing the story, and the message stated, "Glad to see new members joining our site. And it's very strange seeing your IP address connecting to 3 countries in Europe. I will find out where you live, and you'll be our next victim appearing on our next live stream." This made me and my friend Chris hurl. I think I passed out. So once he said that, I tried everything in my power to find out where his IP traced to. I even tried to hack into the site, so at least I could do something, right? I found nothing but wormholes. If you know what wormholes are, it's what we hackers like to use as a term stating that things we try to find ends up going nowhere, just a hole or a loop. Another message pops up saying, "I know you're trying to look for me. I suggest you stop, Aaron." It said my name. I swear I looked everywhere at this point. The owner actually found my address and where I lived, and my monitor froze. I couldn't do anything at this point. Another message popped up saying, "See you in a couple days." I got scared and my monitor turned off with my PC. Me and Chris got scared shitless. A couple days went by, and I started noticing a black BMW with a Virginia license plate parked outside my apartment building. At first, I didn't think much of it, because Toronto is a tourist attraction for everyone from around the world to come to. So as I glanced towards a BMW, I tried to see who was in the car, but it had tinted windows. As I walked to the streetcar stop to go to my school, it followed the streetcar till the stop I got off at. I chuckled a little bit with my friend Chris next to me saying, "You think it's a guy from the chat box?" And we both just chuckled at that. When 4th period started, me and my friend Chris decided to skip it because it was 1:30 p.m. and school finished at 2:50. So as we leave the front entrance of our school, we got caught by our vice principal. His name is Mr. B. We showed our sign-out sheets. We got the previous day from that, and we showed it to him. And in surprise, we realized that Mr. B actually bought it. As we left our school, that same black BMW with the tinted windows was still there. We kinda got scared for a bit, then laughed it off. Then we just turned right.